do that. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about the gift that keeps on giving. And the gift that keeps on giving is, and I'm going to share a couple of stories about my speaking and how it's the gift that keeps on giving. But just a couple of notes, there will be no show on Christmas Eve or on New Year's Eve, but get ready because I will have lots of things to talk about come the beginning of the year. So where are you watching from? I know I've got a few people from overseas. If you are here in the US and you happen to celebrate Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving and welcome to the holiday season. Happy Cyber Monday. So a lot of times I hear people say, but once I give a speech, there's this impression that it's one and done. And what I mean by that is that a lot of people have this impression that once you speak to a group, that's it. It kind of disappears forever. Unless you videotape it and then you put it on YouTube. But I'm here to tell you, no, that's so not true. And that's going to be some of the stories that I'm going to share with you about the ripple effect that I have seen in certain events. When you are speaking like I do and you keep track of those events and where referrals come from, they domino. And events that I spoke at years ago, I remember once somebody asked me just to come and address a small group of people that got together, and they basically helped people get jobs. Interviewing, how to dress, etc. And I remember it was a terrible snowstorm, but I showed up anyways, and only about half the attendees, because this was a volunteer association, only about half the attendees showed up. And there was somebody that was in the room, and, I was able to sell my books. There was somebody that was in the room that about 6 months later reached out to me and said, I read your book, but I'm also in charge of a leadership awards ceremony that's here in New Hampshire, and it's like a half-a-day program. Love for you to be one of the keynote speakers. And again, it's not one and done, because years later, just recently, actually, I spoke at a conference here in New Hampshire, and a woman came up to me and said, my husband hired you for an event years ago. I knew exactly who she was talking about, looking at her name tag. This is what I'm talking about. It is the gift that keeps on giving constantly. So tell me, if you're speaking, what do you speak on? And when's the last time that you had a speaking event? Do you have one booked in the future? Are you hosting your own? Because that's another great way to have this same impact, is by hosting your own events. So the gift that keeps on giving. So a few years ago, I attended, my husband's in the waste and recycling business, and I attended this plastic show with him in Dallas. And whenever I go to a show with him, I try to make sure I find the people that are responsible for putting the conference on. That way I can talk to them, because typically the audience that attends these programs are the owners and upper leadership, upper management of these recycling and waste companies. And there's a lot, they're also interested in business and in leadership. And typically there's not that many business or leadership event speakers or breakout sessions that are happening. So again, I always make sure that I find these people, and did speak with somebody, and who referred me to the person that was sitting next to him. And that guy was like, oh yeah, this guy was in the scrap metal industry. And he said, I got a conference, my annual business conference is in 2 months. However, I'm already booked. I've already got all of my speakers lined up. The next question, if you're ever in this situation, is when do you start planning next year? He said November. I said, fantastic. I will reach out to you in November. And I didn't have to wait till November because he actually called me about maybe just a couple of weeks later, letting me know that one of his speakers had dropped out. And here was the title of the segment along with, and here's the information for that segment. And it was completely in my leadership and engagement wheelhouse. So I was able to just step in and present my material in a conference that was already planned. And sold out room. And I ended up at the end, I had a conversation with the CEO. And it was such a great conversation. I said, hey, give me your business card and let me know what mailing address. I said, let me mail you a copy of my book. So I did. About 6 months later, he sends me an email. It says, I loved your book so much that I bought a copy of it for all the employees in my company. And that one purchase made me an Amazon bestseller as a little note. And that particular book that I'm talking about is my first book, Rethink Leadership: 4 Lessons to Make You Remarkable. From there, about a year later, he contacted me again saying, I have an annual leadership retreat for my upper leadership team and board members. I would love to have you come to Oregon, and would you present and help facilitate our retreat? What would it take to get you to come out? I went out. A year later, he contacted me again saying that he was part of the State of Oregon's Recycling Conference Committee. And again, what would it take to have me come out and speak at that conference? So again, constantly putting me in front of new people, OPA, that you've probably heard me say before, other people's audiences. And again, it's the gift that keeps on giving. So just because you speak once, it does not become something that just fizzles out. I mean, what's the open rate right now in email? And if you're like me, I send out emails, so I'm constantly looking at those numbers or testing, doing A and B testing for subject lines. And what is it like? Like the average, I think, is like 20 to 30%, something like that. Maybe it's a teeny bit higher. But, it can be frustrating. Like you send out an email and only 20 to 30% of the people are actually opening your emails and reading them. Whereas when you are speaking in front of an audience, and let's just use the number of 50, that's 50 people that are paying attention to you and listening to you. And that's, and then you are still in their mind. So a lot of those people from that scrap metal conference that I spoke at, that I was, the story I was just telling you about a little bit earlier, that, turned into a lot of people got a copy of my book. So a book is, it's one of my best business cards, because people don't throw away a book. And typically they don't throw it away. It'll sit on a bookshelf. It'll sit on a desk, or maybe it goes to a used bookstore. I have had people actually send me pictures of when they found my book in a used bookstore. But it's, if it's on your bookcase, and you are suddenly find yourself on a committee that you need to find a particular type of speaker. Oh my God, I remember attending a conference or a meeting. I bought her book. Let me go find it. And here I think this one would be great. And that has happened to me numerous times. Also, there's a lot of people that are on my email list, and they will be part of a committee also that is putting together some sort of a conference or a meeting. And those are other ways. So it's just like, it's the gift. It keeps on giving. And so I just so want to encourage you, because now is a great, great time to consider speaking and also to start getting bookings for the new year. While so many people, like typically the month of December, the holidays, this is when the number of conferences and meetings, it just it dies down a little bit. But don't think that people aren't booking, because those meeting planners are planning for 2019 and sometimes even further, depending on the size of the conference. So you're going to like keep getting out there and let's get you booked, because now's like the perfect time. If anything, these meeting planners, they're constantly searching for the right speaker, for, for the keynote spots, for breakout sessions, arranging these amazing conferences and meetings. And you would be a lifesaver when you reach out to them and just say, hey, this is what my topic is. Now, in regards to the gentleman who, the story that I just told you about earlier, who already had his conference booked. I mean, if you put yourself in his shoes, how glad do you think he was that him and I had this moment where we actually met, so that when he had a speaker that dropped out, it was just a matter of, hey, let me reach out to this woman and see if she's available on this day. And I was. And same thing, like all the conferences that you go to, conferences, meetings, events, make sure you find and meet the people who put the events together. It's great networking for you. Let them know that you're a speaker. They, just start to build that relationship and have that conversation, because you never know who they also know, who could, because meeting planners, just like, like us coaches, we all talk to each other. That way, if somebody ever posts something in my private Facebook group, hey, I'm looking for a confidence coach or a money mindset coach, like I know who to refer them to, because I know who those people are. And meeting planners are exactly the same. They talk to each other. Hey, I've got this conference going on. It's on this particular topic. Do you know anybody? Have you seen any great speakers lately? And that all helps tremendously. So what are your goals? And if you're watching the replay, type in replay, but what are your goals for 2019? Love to see, like, how many times do you want to get booked? And how many events do you want to speak at? And here's another great question. How many events do you want to self-host? Do you want to put on yourself? And honestly, they're not that hard. When it's just your first one, just like anything, like when I wrote my first book, it was tough because I, didn't know a whole lot of people who had done what I was trying to do. And, I did it on my own, and from the outside, it always seems like a daunting task. And I remember when my very first event that I hosted, I created posters. I put those posters up in Starbucks. I just asked them for permission, and they told me, this was back then, I'm not sure if it's still true, that as long as it's a free event that's open to the public, that I could use their bulletin board and feel free to put it up there. And I did. And later I found out that it had typos in it. And I actually even I had the right name of the restaurant, but I actually had the wrong address that was on there. Despite those two things, I still had a full room. And I still had a great time, and everybody left with great value. And maybe that's something that I could talk about during another event, because there was still a way that I was able to capture people's email addresses and their mailing addresses as well. And so that I could, basically you've been to one of my events, once you attend one, then the likelihood of them attending another, or even buying or, paying for a ticket to a future event, or even hiring me as their coach, is really, really great. Greater than, because I wasn't a cold market for them. So again, it's the gift that keeps on giving, and I really do keep track of the events that I speak at. And whenever somebody reaches out to me to ask me, how, if I'm available for this day, I always ask them, how did you hear about me? And there's either, I attended one of your conferences, I saw you speak, somebody that's on a committee heard you speak, and that's why we're reaching out to you. And it's this domino effect. If you think of throwing a pebble, into the lake, and it's a ripple effect. That's what speaking will do for you. And, I'm just using the number of 50, if you're speaking in front of 50 people, but there's a lot of meetings that have in the hundreds. and I've spoken to very large audiences. So, like how can you, where else besides speaking, and whether that's on a stage live or like this, some sort of screen, like some virtual web event, where else can I actually, basically let people get to know me, get to like me and trust me in 1 hour. Okay. I can't do, 1,000, sales calls in 1 hour, but you can with speaking. And that's why it's so valuable. But the other thing is, you want to find the right audiences. You want to speak in front of the right audiences so that those are the ones that will have that ripple effect. Maybe one of these days I'll bring a friend of mine on, and he's a motivational humorist, and he's got some great talks on like leadership and engagement, and he's got some great stories about when he first started out, and because we both share stories about about speaking in front of like the wrong audience. And now as a business coach and a speaking strategist, I make sure that my clients don't speak in front of the wrong audience. I help them ask the right questions. So because it is Cyber Monday, today is also the last day. Let me just put this up here. Today's the last day to get in on my Cyber Monday special. I think there's like 3 spots left. I am calling it Rent LA for 90 minutes. And it's half off of what it normally is. And what's even better is that I have never offered this before and will never offer this again because my prices are actually going up very soon and into the new year. So what can we do? What is Rent LA for 90 minutes? For 90 minutes, you can pick my brain and we can work on whatever it is that you want to work on. If you want to host your own event, then we can start the planning, and I will teach you all of my step-by-step so that it is stress-free. Because when you show up at your event stress-free, you're going to do a much better job. So that's one thing that we can talk about. Another thing, we can start putting together what I call a 3 C's presentation, which is compelling, captivating, and most importantly, converting. And converting also means getting additional speaking events when you're up there, whether it's virtual or on a stage. The goal is to walk off the stage and have somebody come up to you. This is my goal. Somebody come up to you and say, I know another group that I think that you would be perfect for. That's what you want to hear. And so we can work on your presentation. We can just hey, how do you get started in speaking? Speaking, just here in the US, there are over 228,000, that's 3 zeros, events, meetings, conferences that happen every single month. Some months have more than others, but that's on average. And a event could actually have 12 speakers in one day. Just think of during the course of 6 hours, there could be 2 breakout sessions. That's 12 different events. That's 12 different speakers, but that actually only counts as one event. So there is a huge opportunity out there. And there are not, in my opinion, and a lot of other women speakers that I know that are good friends of mine, there aren't enough female speakers either. So if this is something that you are interested in doing, I'd love, let me know if you want to start getting into speaking. I'd love to help you. And this little special of Rent LA, that will end tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And you can grab one of those slots. And there is an amazing guarantee with that also. So check out the sales page and you can read about the guarantee. And you don't have to use it right now. Nope, not at all. If you want to go through the holidays and wait until next year, you just do that. Just reach out to me and let me know, and you will get a link to book your 90 minutes with me. So I hope you guys had had a great Thanksgiving, great holiday weekend. It was a 4-day weekend basically here in the U.S. And now we are, we're rapidly approaching into the holiday season. So I just thought that this title was appropriate. Speaking is the gift that keeps on giving all year, every year, on and on. So no event is ever said and done. And the other ways to do it is to get video and to put it up on YouTube or Vimeo or your website. Very similar. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop them down. I'd love to hear what you want to speak about. And also, what are your goals for speaking for 2019? I think it's a great time to start getting booked, and you will be the lifesaver for a lot of meeting planners. Let's come up with some compelling, captivating, titles. In the speaking world that we call them, like a sexy title. Let's come up with some sexy titles for you and get you out there. You guys all have a great week. Happy Cyber Monday. And remember the Rent LA for 90 minutes. The special ends tonight at 6 p.m. Have a great day.